You're listening to a Rock Candy podcast.
Hey, I'm Joe, and I'm a composer and a musician.
That's why we call you the maestro. And I'm Will. I'm a literal doctor.
But don't trust this guy with your ailments.
No, I study comic books, but it still counts.
We're a couple of creative kids who host a podcast called Common Creatives.
We dig deep into filmmakers, musicians, books, and characters, really all types of artistic works and the people who make them.
We break apart the art we love to see what makes it tick.
Basically, we give you the definitive take on whatever or whoever we're discussing. All opinions are definitive and final.
So check out Common Creatives wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome to the 11ty Life podcast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the very first 11ty Life episode of year 2021. I am so happy to have you as a part of the Rock Candy world today. Rock Candy has a lot to be thankful for in 2021 because over the last year, we have onboarded some amazing other creators and podcasts to be a part of this network. A lot of you are already checking them out, are already listening to them. We've got Bubble and Squeak by our good friend Peterson Toscano, who's been a guest on the show before. If you have not checked out his show, gosh, you really need to up your podcast game. He's amazing. We have our good friends Will and Joe of Common Creatives who are part of the network now. We absolutely love having them here. We also have a brand new podcast called Magnified Pod by our friends Andrew and John. They are brand spanking new to the network. If you have not checked out Magnified Pod yet and you are an MXPX or Five Iron Frenzy fan or just a fan of all of the independent rock music coming out of the early 2000s, man, you're going to love checking them out and they're going to have some high fives waiting for you over there on their show. We also were fortunate enough to have the lovely Erica of Brown Sugar Diaries, and we absolutely love hearing her audio journals of her experiences in the great city of Atlanta, Georgia. Unicorn hugs and high fives to everybody over at the 11ty Live Facebook group. Thank you so much for sharing your New Year's resolutions with me. I know that a lot of times New Year's resolutions can feel weird. It feels like we're kind of at that stage in life now where we've seen through the charade that is New Year's resolutions because so many of us have gone through so many years of our lives making these resolutions, and by the end of January, they are nowhere to be seen. I feel you. I feel that energy. I just want to encourage everybody that this is a brand new year. 2020 was unprecedentedly shitty, and we have a lot to be grateful for looking forward to 2021. And I think that New Year's resolutions, at least for me, are a really great time to sort of sit down, to get quiet, to become as meditative as I possibly can in the moment, which I'm not very good at, but I'm making attempts and trying my best and giving it my best, and that's got to be enough. It's a good time to take an inventory of your life, take an inventory of your friends, take an inventory of your feelings and your beliefs about yourself and of the world around you, to think about the things that you might want to change. But not only that, to think about the reasons why you want to change things about yourself. Sometimes we just want to change things about ourselves to fit in. Sometimes we just want to change things about ourselves because we think that a better us might make us happy. But that's not always the case. Sometimes happiness comes from accepting ourselves. This is something that I'm learning personally in my life. I hope it's helpful for you. I just want to send out some love to everybody who is doing their meditative, mental, inner work. And I wish for nothing but an overabundance of love streaming your way in 2021. Hey, a big thank you to everybody who is heading over to rockcandyrecordings.com. We have been doing so much mix and production work for other artists, for indie artists, right here in the studio. Even during lockdown, we've worked remotely with a ton of artists in 2020. We're super grateful for that. I absolutely love being able to help other artists refine their sound and sound the absolute best that they can to bring their musical visions to life. And I am looking forward to a whole lot of projects we have coming up this spring. It is incredibly exciting and humbling to be a part of other people's musical dreams. So thank you to everybody who's allowing me to be a part of yours. This episode, we are taking a deep dive into one of my favorite tracks off of our brand new Betamosh EP. It is called Brains, and it is a weird little quirk in the Eleventy universe. It's a super acoustic guitar-driven song. We haven't done that in probably, 8 years, written anything like that ended up in final production sort of feeling that way. And yeah, there's just a lot of really fun, cool textures happening. And for all of the bedroom producers, singers, and songwriters out there, this episode is especially for you. I love digging into the foundations of what makes a song kind of feel and sound and vibe the way that it does. We gotten a few requests on the internet to do this song in particular, and so I figured what better way to start off 2021 than giving the people what they want. Big unicorn magic to everybody and all of you who are supporting what we do by purchasing anything from the Rock Candy Recordings online store. You help us to keep this content flowing, to help keep albums in production, to help keep really fun things like merch and vinyl and tees stocked and ready to go. We cannot thank you enough for the large part that you play in that. To everybody that's a part of the Eleventy and Rock Candy family, man, we love you guys so much. Be sure to share that with somebody else who needs it this weekend. So without further ado, let's dive into this solo button episode for the song Brains. So I thought it might be a really cool idea to dig into this song in particular because it's going to look a little bit different than a lot of the other Eleventyseven tunes. I feel like when I first started out thinking about what I wanted this song to sound like, I kind of wanted a break from a lot of the super heavy, sugary synthesizer sounds that we had done on Basic Glitches. And I had this little demo kind of sitting around, not really sure what to do with it, but it ended up starting out with an acoustic guitar. And I kind of just created an acoustic guitar loop, which I'll play for you guys here in a second. But in keeping with a lot of at least the newer Eleventy stuff, the drum sounds in particular on this song, they feel very acoustic. It feels kind of like there's a really dry live drum kit. But every single drum part that was done for this song in particular is actually just kind of all Frankenstein and pieced together using samples and different kinds of loops. So the first thing that we'll do is kind of break down what's happening in the drums with this song, and I'll let you guys kind of hear how we took a very layered approach to kind of get that live kit sound that sort of takes it out of the dance EDM world and more into like the real world. So right here we start off, and the main loop for the song is actually comprised of a kick and a snare and a bunch of different loops kind of building around this one central hi-hat loop. So I'll play you guys right here what we have. This is the snare sound at the beginning of the song. So I'll play that for you. So that's the snare that you're hearing. It's pretty dry. And then this is actually the snare underneath that one that sounds a little bit different. So that one feels very much more acoustic, kind of more live kiddish. So together, they kind of end up sounding like this. So one is kind of carrying the weight of the snare, and the other one is kind of all the sizzly top end kind of acoustic stuff. And so down here, we actually did the same thing, or took the same approach with the kick drums for the song. So here's what the kick sounds like. So that's like a super kind of like thuddy, subby, almost sort of EDM kind of sounding kick. And then we layered it with this guy. So that's like the acoustic kit sample. So together, when we get the kick and snare kind of working, here's what happens. And I know it might sound really ticky, but even just kind of having that little bit of layover in the snare sample, or you can kind of hear it sizzling in the background, to me, I love that kind of stuff. And it looks like we also had a clap sample, which we'll add the clap sample in there. Actually, I'll play that for you guys here, just soloed. It's kind of buried in the mix, but it feels really cool once you get it in there. I've really, especially recently, gotten into adding more acoustic samples to songs because you can totally control them within Pro Tools and kind of craft them to sound the way that you want. But I really like it because it feels like it keeps one foot in the real world and you can kind of create these really fun textures with it. So underneath all of that, we have this main hi-hat loop. I'll play that for you guys. So a very live hi-hat. And then underneath that hi-hat loop, we have some fun little crunchy digital goodness going on underneath it too. So here's the other loop that's playing simultaneously with that. like super shitty drum machine kind of sound, but I just thought it was kind of fun. And then underneath that, we also have another loop. This feels a little more like dancey. It's kind of fun. So when you play all three of those loops together, here's what you get. And then when we add in our kick and snare, everything starts to come to life a little bit. And then down here, we also have a crash. So this is the very intro of the song, right when the drums come in. And then on top of that crash, I added what is referred to as a downlifter or an impact sound, which basically is just a cool transitional piece to kind of let everybody know, like, hey, we're starting a new thing. We're going on a new journey. You can kind of hear that white noise playing around in the background. I really like it. And then down here, we have this little bit of vinyl crackle noise. And I feel like a lot of times, especially when you're programming a drum kit or you're trying to put something in the real world, sometimes just adding noise to it can be a really cool choice and decision. It kind of almost like it feels like you're listening to it on an album. So that is some crackly noise that I just think is kind of cool. And maybe it's not something that you hear immediately, but I feel like it's something that you feel in the track. So right here, I'm going to solo you guys the acoustic guitar because that's kind of what opens the song. So here we go. I feel like it almost kind of has this sort of Island in the Sun vibe via or a la Weezer. So I added another acoustic guitar to this because I love creating stems out of multiple layered instruments. So a lot of times if you're wanting for a sound to get bigger, play the exact same part and throw them left and right in the stereo field, and you kind of end up with this cool sugary acoustic guitar sound. I forgot about that little ding there at the very end. I really like that. It's fun. So at the beginning of the song, I almost feel like when I was building this track, I was just taking some of the samples I was already working with, whether it was guitar strums or if I had an instrument hooked up, I would just sort of take these little stabs or these little samples of that instrument, whether it's a guitar or a synthesizer. And I would spend a lot of time just trying to manipulate that sound to kind of fit within this almost sort of like lo-fi world that it's inhabiting. So one of the things that I did was to create this little, just a simple little acoustic guitar strum. And I'll play that for you guys right now. This is at the very beginning of the song. Here we go. So just really, really simple strums. And with lots of effects and plugins on. I'm actually going to take all the plugins off of this track so we can hear it without all of the stuff in it. So just a regular acoustic guitar that I probably ran through a delay. And then when we add a little bit of pitch shifting on it, and then EQ it a little bit, and then throw a little bit of a trim, what's called a tremolator on top of it. And then the final thing we added was just more reverb. So just kind of has this cool vibe to it. The most noticeable thing I feel like in the intro is this sample flip that I have, which was literally just, I think it was just a vocal sample of somebody either yelling, hey, or whoa, or something. It's been so mashed and mangled at this point, I'm not entirely sure how I made it to begin with, but I'll play that for you guys right here. So if I take, let's see what kind of plugins I have on this thing here. Got a little bit of Echo Boy and a little bit of delay, or sorry, a little bit of reverb. So it kind of sounds like some of those old sampling machines, how they would just make everything really dirty and kind of grimy. And I really like that sound. I think it's super fun. And yeah, it's pretty cool. I think I might have got the idea to do this sample thing from a song called Pumped Up Kicks by Foster the People. A really, really famous song that you guys probably already know about. And I just thought that song has this really cool intro with what sounds like a vocal sample kind of similar to that in the intro. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll try to approximate something like that and try to make it my own. And that's where the idea for that came from. And then we have this really cool synthesizer part that's also playing in the intro. I'll solo that for you guys. Well, I thought I would solo it for you guys. Here we go. So this sound actually is if I remember correctly, I think it's just a Juno 106, which you guys hear me praise ad nauseum on the podcast. And if you've ever worked with me in the studio, at some point I will probably pull out the Juno 106 and try to make some cool textury sounds with it. It's a super, super fun synthesizer. If you ever have a chance to grab one, a really good deal on one, you should take it because this thing is super fun to play around with. And you can tell that this particular synthesizer loop that I created out of the Juno is detuned kind of heavily, like almost to the point where if it was detuned anymore, it would sound a little bit off. And I was running that probably through a distortion pedal. It was probably like a tube screamer or something, just to put a little bit of heat on it. Then running it through this really cool pedal called the Descent. It's a pedal that's made by Walrus Audio, and it's just got this cool sort of washy sort of vibe in it. It's all over the Basic Glitches record. Anything that you kind of hear just spacing out in the background that's like dirty and nasty, that's where a lot of that sound comes from. So all of that stuff's happening right now in the intro, and I'm going to play you guys a little bit of the bass sound now. Here we go. I really, really love that sound, but I can tell even just looking at these tracks right now that I'm not a super great bass player by any stretch of the imagination. So I'll play, maybe 4 or 5 seconds of something that I really know I can nail, and then go back and either edit it or learn the next part and then play that. So the bass sound is actually made up of 2 separate sounds. Here's the first one. The really nasty, distorted one. And then underneath that is this guy. A little bit brighter, not really any bottom end to it, but together, they sound really cool. And it looks like I've got it's this really cool plugin called a decapitator. It's made by Sound Toys. And it looks like I'm putting a lot of dirt on it. So I'll mute that real quick and let's just see what happens. Yeah, it definitely sounds a little more clean, but I feel like a lot of the personality's gone. So we throw that on there. And we get a little bit of that buzz back. Hell yeah, I love buzz. Totally buzzing bass. Pretty fun. So everything together now kind of works out like this. Actually, before I do that, there's one little intro bit right here. The song, actually, the very first thing you hear in the song is this reversed sample that sounds like this. I don't know where that came from or what that is, but it was some kind of a sample that I put a bunch of reverb on and reversed, and it just kind of is a fun way to kind of slide the listener into the song. So here's what we end up with everything kind of working together. Awesome. So we're heading right now into the first verse of the song. And everything kind of like, I feel like when I was writing the song, I felt like I had a really fun and engaging intro to it. It felt really interesting to me. I really liked hearing all those elements working together. So whenever you're heading into your first verse, what you want to do is try to bring the dynamics down so that you have somewhere to go into the chorus. And so here's what's happening in the verse. Just bass and drum. I totally forgot about these little guys. So just like we made one of that acoustic guitar sample that we totally washed out, we did it again right here, like midway through the first verse. So here's what that sounds like. Just dreamy and lo-fi and creamy and weird, and I love it. And then down here, we also have this vocal sample happening, which I'll play for you guys. I feel like that is a vocal sample that I just pulled off of Splice or something. And then down here, it's probably one of my favorite little bits in the song or things I was able to make with the Juno. I think this is the Juno. I have no idea what that is, but it is. It clearly has some kind of like bit crushing effect on it. It might have been another sample or just like a quick jab that I took at the keyboard. But yeah, here's what all of that sounds like together. And so as we head into the second half of the first verse, we end up just adding a few more little elements. So that one Juno 106 part that I was talking about that I added at the beginning of the song, we also bring that over here and just see what it fits like. With the bass. Yeah, I really like that. And then down here, right as we're about to head into the pre-chorus, we have this little fun guy. Just completely delayed out to make it kind of wacky and weird. So right here, we get into the pre-chorus. And in the pre-chorus, I actually just start introducing a lot more noise. So underneath all of the instrumentation, what you can hear is this guy. You can kind of feel the little snap, crackle, pop in there. And then underneath there is also some more vinyl sounds. So together, they just kind of work to create this really, really fun texture underneath everything. To me, it feels really good. My ears just love hearing that kind of stuff. So the drum sounds actually change in the pre-chorus. So as we're heading into here, here's what it sounds like. So the drum sounds here are just comprised of a kick drum, super thuddy kind of drum machine vibe. And then in keeping with that drum machine vibe, this is like probably like an 808 or a 909 kind of snare hit happening here. Oh, I just love that snare sound for some reason. And underneath here, we've got a couple of loops going to help maintain our 16ths or our 8ths. Yeah. Kicking it old school. I'm painfully white. Here we go. We've got our little drum machine sound. Makes a little entrance back in there. So it feels really simple, but there's a lot of little things kind of going on underneath the surface that are really fun. The acoustic guitars start palm muting. And then right here, to really elevate the chorus and to make it feel a little bit different, like it has more impact, like it has more energy, we start doubling up the acoustic guitar. So I'll play what these stacked acoustic guitars sound like for you guys one at a time. So as we head into the chorus, we kind of have this guy going. And then we add the other guitar. And then we add another one. And one more. So it's just this really fun way because I felt like, we talked about at the beginning of the song how I kind of wanted this one to feel a little more acoustic driven and to feel a little bit more traditionally instrumental in that way. And then all of our drums come back in, except that we start just like slamming the chorus full of all these different loops. So one of them is this hi-hat loop, which we heard earlier. And we add our drum machine one in there. We add our cool little clappy one. And then we have a little bit crushed loop down here. Just kind of give it this super cool Atari or 8-bit sort of vibe. And then we have a tambourine loop happening. And so all of these are just ways that we're kind of like supplementing what the listener is hearing so that it feels like there's more movement. A lot of times, like if you're trying to create more movement or the illusion that things are picking up in a song, if you are programming your drum in 8ths, sometimes just moving to 16ths, moving to something a little bit busier can feel really cool and sort of change the vibe of the song and make it feel like, oh yeah, we're on the highway now. So here's what happens when we head into all of this together. So really, really simple parts that anybody could play or anybody could learn very quickly. But when they all work together, they kind of create something a little bit greater than the sum of its parts. We've got our sample flip. And one of the things that you probably heard in there is the intro of this pad. One of the things that I've found throughout the course of producing is that sometimes adding just a simple pad that's not even necessarily changing notes, just something that is that's in the key of the song, maybe the 1 and the 5 for all of you musical theory kids out there. Just some sort of a cool thing that is going to work with all the other notes. So I added this big pad in the chorus. And it's just this kind of evolving, sort of swirly sound. And it's not changing notes at all. It's just the same chord. Cool. So heading into the second verse, we have this new riser, which I'll play for you guys. I'm not even entirely sure how this was made, so I apologize. So it sounds like I might have made it out of like a really distorted Rhodes keyboard sound and just reversed it. But this is probably my favorite part of the song because the chord progression starts changing a little bit, and that was intentional to kind of feel like, okay, well, we've already heard the first verse kind of twice because it's a little longer, and I want to sort of engage the listener now with a different chord progression for the verse and do something a little bit more fun. So here's what happens when we head out of the chorus into the second verse. So I'm pretty sure that this is just a Rhodes plugin, a soft synth that is just emulating a Rhodes keyboard, and it has been distorted, probably with something like Decapitator, and definitely there's like a phaser kind of happening on it. And so underneath that, we have this little guy, which is the Prophet Rev 2. And it kind of just adds this fun, robotic kind of booty to what's happening with the Rhodes. So if I play them together, here's the Rev 2. And then we add the Rhodes on top of that. Yeah, favorite part of the whole song, hands down. Here's what it all sounds like together. Got the bass down here, just doing its thing. Cool, yeah. One of the things we haven't dove into yet are vocals. Here's where the vocals come in at the very, very beginning of the song after we kind of blast through the intro. So this is clearly a little bit of a minimal kind of vocal production. Like I know that for those of you who have listened to other solo button episodes that we have done in the past, you know that I'm a huge fan of just stacking the shit out of vocals and making them as big and wide and powerful as I possibly can. Part of that comes from an innate insecurity about my voice. And even when it's not, I still just enjoy hearing these very cool Haas effect kind of vocals that are happening. I like hearing that slight little rub between the vocals and the pitch in the vocals. So here's what's happening with just one vocal. I'm actually going to take a bunch of these plugins off here and we'll just kind of hear.
Rock and motherfucking roll won't ever be as legit as when we were 17. Ooh.
I feel like I sound so goofy without any effects on. Here's what happens whenever we double it. Here's what happens when you sing the exact same thing underneath it.
Rock and motherfucking roll won't ever be as legit as when we were 17. Ooh.
So whenever the ooh ooh oohs come in, we add a few more ooh ooh oohs. I think on the left and right.
Ooh.
Yeah, so you can kind of hear those happening, and then all together we end up with this.
17. Ooh. You're 45, ripping jewels outside of a teenage disco. Baby,
So on the entire vocal bus, which means all of the vocals are being affected by this, I've got a little plugin called the Micro Shift. I feel like a ton of the plugins that I use are made by this company called Soundtoys. They make incredible products. We do not get paid to say that. It just happens to be the things that I go to in my mixing and creative process a lot. And if you like what you're hearing here, or you're kind of like interested in these effects, I would encourage you to wait till they're having some kind of a sale and grab some. So here's what happens whenever I throw the Micro Shift on there. Here's without it.
45, ripping jewels outside.
And then when I add it.
45, ripping jewels outside of a teenage disco. Baby, I could have swore I...
So it's almost like the effect I feel like is really subtle, but it kind of has this way of sort of smearing the vocal and changing the fidelity of it just a little bit to kind of fit the song, because we're kind of swirling everything else around the listener in the moment. And right here are where BGVs come in. I feel like my background vocals always sound kind of lame and weird whenever you solo them, but here we go.
Baby, I could have swore I heard you say, didn't mind if I got high on my birthday.
Yep, so here we go with everything happening right there.
Baby, I could have swore I heard you say, didn't mind if I got high on my birthday. Ooh.
Yeah, so that's what we have going on there.
High on my birthday. Internet freshman making the team.
So right here, when we're heading into the pre-chorus, we start doing these these fun little BGV who's. So I'll play that for you guys. It looks like they were already stemmed out. So it looks like there were probably 8 different tracks of me doing this, and I just bounced them onto one track. Here's what that sounds like. And then halfway through that, we add some more. So here's what that's like with the lead vocals put back in.
Up cams and low self-esteem. All the cheap suits in the management team are gonna wish that I wasn't over it.
So fun, so fun. And then here we go into the chorus.
It's over it. Rains on the pavement. Rash rock band in the basement.
So there's 2 vocals.
Rains on the pavement.
And then I added 2 more singing exactly the same thing.
Rains on the pavement.
then underneath there, we have this little guy happening.
Brains on the pavement, garage rock bands in the basement, pawn shop, pistol with the trick.
So all together, we end up with this.
Brains on the pavement, garage rock bands in the basement, pawn shop, pistol with the trigger, click back with the tempo. We gon' burn it up like coke and the Mentos. Triple bypass on a
Yeah, so there we go. And the vocals actually, so we talked about kind of changing that second verse to feel a little bit more engaging and surprise the listeners so that they don't have to listen to essentially the same first verse, but with different lyrics, because we're doing something a little bit more interesting musical wise. So here's what's happening with the vocals here. I think it drops like an entire octave.
triple bypass on a hometown heartbeat, checking out your name on a dive bar marquee. Ooh.
And then underneath that, it looks like we've probably got some harmonies.
Triple bypass on a hometown heartbeat, checking out
Yeah, just an
your
octave.
name on a dive bar marquee. Ooh.
Yeah, just exactly the same thing, but up in the stratosphere.
Triple bypass on a hometown heartbeat, checking out your name on a dive bar marquee. Ooh. Sipping on some green tea, long lost Eleventyseven back in your window, baby.
So right here, we actually created a little bit of a fill in the drums coming out of that into the second chorus. And here's how we did that. We just kind of changed up the kick a little bit. Here's what it's like with the claps added in. With a loop underneath it. And then we have this little fill happening here as well, which maybe was a little bit too low in the mix in hindsight, but here's what's happening with that. So probably just some sort of like percussion loop that I found somewhere and I just kind of spliced it up to feel fun. Right, and so it's business as usual for the rest of the verse and the pre-chorus. I don't think that a ton changes there. I'm looking at the session now, and it seems like, yeah, so we end up coming to our second chorus. Okay, so now we've come to basically the part of the song where I can't remember what I was thinking when I wrote this. Like a lot of times I'll kind of force myself to write a bridge, and the whole purpose of me kind of writing that bridge is either because it feels like the song needs it or I feel like I need some more explaining to do lyrically. So if I feel like I haven't quite driven the point home or there's a way to kind of like wrap up what the song is about lyrically, I'll use the bridge for that. In this case, I kind of felt like this song was so kind of stream of consciousness craziness that I was just like, you know, I'm just going to do whatever feels kind of good right here in the moment. And that meant tossing a synthesizer solo, shocker, into the bridge area. And here's what that sounds like. So underneath that is an effects track that's kind of doing the same thing but in a different fidelity. Yeah, and I can tell just looking at this session that this was probably tracked on something like the Rev 2. So it's probably tracked on an analog synthesizer with a bunch of effects and stuff in it. And it looks like I've gone in and kind of chopped it up and made it feel kind of weird. But here's what it's like together. Yeah, and then it just goes into the stratosphere. But here's what happens whenever you add the acoustic guitar in there. So we have our pad playing here in the background. We have our sample going on. So one of the things that I always try to do is if we're getting to the final chorus in a song, I always want to add something to elevate that final chorus and set it apart from all of the other ones. Now, this one sounds really similar, but there's some tiny little subtle ways that I attempted to do that. One of them was adding an extra acoustic guitar part, which is something that you kind of maybe feel instead of hear directly. So I'll play you guys at this point in the song. Here's what's happening with the acoustic guitars. So you've already heard that part before. Underneath it, we start to add this little guy. Just maybe 3 notes, kind of all strummed together. It looks like I probably played this twice and threw them left and right in the stereo field. So here's what that sounds like with the other guitars added in. So there you go. And it looks like at the very end of the song, we just have a bunch of effects and stuff happening. Here's what's at the very end when all the drums cut out. We have a crash. We have another crash underneath that. Pitched lower. And then we have the down lifter that you heard at the beginning of the song. There we go. There we go. So that is Brains. I really hope that you guys have enjoyed the solo button episode for this. This is one of my favorite songs, I think, that's on the EP, that's on the Betamosh EP. And I like it because it feels a little bit different. It has been so long since we actually did a song that was primarily based around an acoustic guitar. And these are just some interesting ways that you can kind of take a really simple idea like an acoustic guitar part or loop that you have, and you can create your own sort of world around it. Your preference is your artistry. So the things that you want to hear in a song are the things that your ears kind of gravitate towards. That's one of the things that I absolutely love about working with other artists is that they hear things differently. They have different worlds that they're trying to create in their head. And a lot of times I enjoy visiting those worlds. I think they're absolutely fantastic. Whoever you are, whatever you're doing right now, I hope if you are a producer, if you are a singer-songwriter, if you are making your own beats or songs at home in on your laptop or in whatever studio space that you have set up, I hope that maybe this was an opportunity to think about things in a new way, to try some different things out that may not seem like they work at first, and to really put in the time to sort of craft the worlds that you want to introduce listeners to. I hope that you've enjoyed this song. If not, I'm really sorry for having wasted your time. There are a million other podcasts out there that you can listen to, and I hope that you find one that fits what you love about life. And just for unicorn's sake, I want to play this little effects part here in the song that we go out on. Super fun. Just this cool sort of Daft Punk sound that I thought was really rad, and it's actually right here going into the last chorus. I'll play that for you, and then we'll get out of here.
Hashtags in the back of my mind. I'm gonna wish that I wasn't over it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me. Thank you so much to everybody that is sending me demos and letting me hear the kind of magic that you are creating. That is always so fun for me to hear. And I love getting demos from people who listen to solo button episodes and then went and tried to either recreate this kind of stuff or to make something completely brand new on their own. Let me encourage you in that. I know that it's the beginning of the year 2021. We have so many different things to look forward to, and it is easy to kind of fall into that malaise, that January, February cold malaise. I just want to sit and curl up with some hot cocoa and some unicorn pear paraphernalia and watch Netflix and chill. But do something creative. Do something that is taking the magic inside of you and pulling it out and sharing it with the rest of the world. Don't just be a passive consumer of the things that you love. Let those things that you love reinforce this magic and this power that you have inside of you, that you can create these sort of sonic exploratory worlds. You can manifest the world inside yourself for the rest of the world to enjoy. So that sounds a little bit heady and maybe a little bit weird, but it's the vibe I am going with today, and I love it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Let me know if you guys have other songs that were on Basic Glitches or the Betamosh EP that you guys want me to do a solo button episode for, and I will kindly oblige you in doing that. Love you guys, and we'll see you next week.
11T Life is a production of Rock Candy Recordings